Silent, ancient, and enormous, they ruled a world we barely understand. Some were swift, some were armored, all were deadly. These are the 5 prehistoric sea monsters that ruled before the dinosaurs. 5. The Camaracaras. The ocean depths are dark, cold, and merciless, and life down there is often monstrous. Take, for example, the chambered nautilus, which still swims the oceans today. It's an alien-looking cephalopod armed with a sharp beak and tentacles that can snatch up prey in its colossal siphon. And it's not alone. There are dozens of nautilus species lurking in the darkness, but none more terrifying than the Camaracaras. The name means crooked horn, and that's exactly what this monster looked like. Imagine a 30-foot-long shelled beast gliding silently through the water. That's how big the Camaracaras got. At 9 meters, it had to be one of the largest cephalopods that ever existed. It weighed nearly half a ton, and its shell was a labyrinth of chambers connected by a central siphon. The animal used these chambers to control its buoyancy, moving up and down in the water with ease. It also used them to store water, expelling it from the siphon at high pressure to propel itself forward. This jet propulsion allowed the Camarasaurus to swim with incredible speed, chasing down prey or escaping danger. But the most terrifying feature of all was its beak. Like a pair of giant scissors, it sliced through flesh and crushed bone. So when this monster hunted, there was no escape. Its tentacles lashed out with lightning speed, wrapping themselves around unsuspecting prey. Then the Camarasauro would retract its tentacles, pulling its victim closer and closer until it was within beak range. And that's where this prehistoric nightmare really started to tear through flesh. The only thing that might have been able to take on the Camarasaurus was another Camarasaurus. In fact, fossils tell us that the males fought each other with their beaks and tentacles in violent displays of strength. But their reign of terror didn't last forever. And when the oceans changed, the Camarasaurus disappeared into extinction. Number 4. The Dunkleosteus. The heaviest fish that ever lived was also one of the scariest. Known as the Dunkleosteus, this beast grew up to 33 feet long and weighed over a ton. It had huge paddle-shaped fins and a mouth full of bone-crushing teeth. It was such a powerful predator that it could easily tear through the flesh of other fish and even bite in half other Dunkleosteus. The latter part isn't surprising when you look at its jaws. They were built for crushing, kind of like a guillotine made of bone. These jaws could deliver a bite force of over 700 pounds per square inch, enough to grind through anything from flesh to rock-hard scales. What's more, the Dunkleosteus was covered in armor. Its head, neck, and shoulders were protected by thick bony plates that were almost 2 inches thick. This heavy armor meant that the Dunkleosteus was very slow on land, but in the water, it was unstoppable. In fact, some researchers believe that the Dunkleosteus was the apex predator of its time, ruling the oceans with an iron fin, and it had good reason to be aggressive. The Dunkleosteus was constantly fighting for its life, not just against rivals, but against its own kind. Male Dunkleosteus battled each other for the right to mate. Sometimes these fights went on for hours, leaving both competitors exhausted and ready to give up. In the end, only one male would win the right to breed. But the violence didn't stop there. Sometimes female Dunkleosteus would even cannibalize each other's young, eating their eggs and stealing their babies. It was a desperate bid to ensure their own survival in a world that was full of danger. However, there were limits to the Dunkleosteus's power. In the end, it couldn't survive the drastic changes in the Earth's climate. It died out along with many other species at the end of the Devonian period. But its legacy lives on in the fossil record, a reminder of the truly terrifying creatures that once roamed the seas. 3. The Helicoprion. Sharks have been around for a long time. They first appeared in the oceans about 400 million years ago. Since then, they've evolved into all shapes and sizes, from the tiny dwarf lantern shark to the gigantic whale shark. But one of the most unusual sharks ever was the Helicoprion. This bizarre creature had a circular saw for teeth. They were shaped like long, thin spirals and could grow up to 8 inches in length. It's believed that the helicoprion used these teeth to slice through the flesh of its prey. But that's just the start of the story. For over a century, scientists couldn't figure out what the heck these weird teeth actually were. They searched everywhere from the front of the shark's mouth to the back of its throat, but they couldn't find either end of the spiral. It wasn't until 1950 that one scientist had the courage to cut open a helicoprion skeleton, and what he found was shocking. The spirals weren't teeth at all. They were part of the upper jaw, twisted together in a tight coil. But why did this shark have such a strange face? Maybe it was to help it find food. After all, some sharks use special receptors in their snouts to detect the weak electrical signals given off by prey. Or maybe it was to defend itself against predators. You see, some sharks use their teeth as weapons, not just for biting, but for stabbing and slashing. The helicoprion's spiral teeth could have been perfect for this job. Whatever the case, the shark's bizarre teeth were just one of its many unique features. It had a long, narrow body and large eyes that helped it hunt in the dark depths. It also had a special adaptation that allowed it to survive in low-oxygen environments. But despite its many adaptations, the helicoprion couldn't survive the mass extinction that wiped out most marine life 66 million years ago. Today, only a few of its fossilized teeth can be found in museums around the world. Number 2, the Liopleurodon. Marine reptiles ruled the oceans during the late Jurassic period. One of the biggest and baddest was the Liopleurodon. It was a type of plesiosaur, an aquatic reptile that had a whale-like body, flippers, and a huge head. But unlike modern whales, the Liopleurodon was a carnivore. It had rows of sharp-pointed teeth that it used to tear through flesh and crush bone. These teeth were so long and thin that they looked like sewing needles. It's estimated that the Liopleurodon could grow up to 33 feet long and weigh over a ton. That's bigger than any whale alive today. No wonder it was the apex predator of its time. It was basically the king of the oceans. But the Liopleurodon wasn't just big. It was also surprisingly fast. It could move through the water at speeds of up to 25 miles per hour. That's faster than most sharks. The Liopleurodon would chase down schools of fish, tearing them apart with its needle-like teeth. It could also take on larger prey, like other marine reptiles and even whales. The Liopleurodon's skull was almost 6 feet long, longer than a grown man's leg. It had a powerful bite and sharp claws that it used to hold on to its prey while it tore it to pieces. But not even the mighty Liopleurodon could survive the drastic changes in the Earth's climate. It died out along with many other species at the end of the Cretaceous period. But its legacy lives on in the fossil record, a reminder of the truly terrifying creatures that once roamed the seas. 1. The Basilosaurus. Whales today come in all shapes and sizes, from the enormous blue whale to the tiny dwarf sperm whale. But one of the strangest whales that ever lived was the Basilosaurus. This ancient creature was a true monster, growing up to 55 feet long and weighing over 100 tons. That's bigger than any whale alive today. But the Basilosaurus wasn't just big, it was also incredibly vicious. It had a serpent-like body with a row of jagged teeth that it used to slice through flesh and crush bone. It was basically the apex predator of its time, hunting other whales and marine reptiles without fear. But the Basilosaurus wasn't always so successful in its hunts. It had plenty of enemies, including the Megalodon. This massive shark was even bigger than the Basilosaurus. It had rows of huge, serrated teeth that it used to slice through flesh like butter. When these two giants clashed, it was a battle for the ages. The Basilosaurus would thrash its massive tail, sending the Megalodon crashing through the surface. Then it would open its wide mouth and clamp its teeth around the shark's body. The Megalodon would bite back, slashing through the Basilosaurus's skin and muscle. But the whale wasn't giving up. It would keep biting and clawing until the shark was dead. The Basilosaurus wasn't just brutal, it was also smart. It was one of the first whales to develop echolocation, which allowed it to navigate the darkest depths and find prey in the blackness. But despite its size, strength, and intelligence, the Basilosaurus couldn't survive the drastic changes in the Earth's climate. It died out along with many other species at the end of the Cretaceous period. But its legacy lives on in the fossil record, a reminder of the truly terrifying creatures that once swam the oceans. These ocean beasts vanished long before T-Rex ever lived, but their bones rest in stone. How do you think these sea monsters compare to the greatest monsters that walk the earth? Let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Leave a like if you learned something new and stay creative.